Good evening, everyone. My name is Vernisha Jones, and I am the president of the West Garfield Park Youth Council. And we believe that we are the solution to the issues in our community. Our theme is Nothing With Us, Without Us. The West Garfield Park Youth Council is sponsored by Fathers Who Care, which is a nonprofit organization located on the west side of Chicago, within the West Garfield Park community. Again, everyone, I'm Vernisha Jones, and I'm the president of the West Garfield Park Youth Council. The West Garfield Park Youth Council is comprised of young people from our community whose focus and concern is youth leadership and having a voice within the community to reduce senseless violence and illegal substance use. We invite people from all over, especially our young people, to come in and see what we are all about. Our show will be scheduled every Thursday at 7 p.m. Again, that is every Thursday at 7 p.m. Our show can also be viewed online at www.cantv.com/live. Again, that is www.cantv.org. I'm sorry, I said .com.org/live. Well, everyone, I would like to introduce my guest this evening, Miss Fanya Burford Berry.
Burford.
I thought I had it right. I was practicing.
Exactly.
Burford Berry, the director of the West Side Heroin Opioid Task Force.
Yes.
Thank you for being a guest on my show tonight.
Oh, I love it. Thank you for inviting me.
No problem. Again, everyone, I'm Vernisha Jones, and I'm the president of the West Garfield Park Youth Council. You are now watching a live interactive program brought to you by CanTV 21. During the next 25 minutes, we are going to discuss how to bring awareness alternatives to violence and substance abuse on the west side of Chicago. So, you ready to get going with these questions?
I am.
Okay,
Yes.
you sure?
I am. Absolutely.
Okay. Can you tell everybody who are you and what is your purpose for existing? And when answering this question, I want you not to so much think on the business side. You know, close your eyes and think about it. Not the business side. Think about your personal self and what you got going on.
Thank you for inviting me.
No
to
problem.
Share with you my purpose for existing.
She was
Yes.
giggling when I gave her this question too, y'all.
Well, it's actually simple. When I was born, Vernisha, you probably know my name is sort of unusual.
Yeah.
It's Fanya. And Fanya is a Swahili word that means to make, to do, to make an effort. And my dad and mother were part of the Black Power movement in the 1960s and 70s. My mother was a Black Panther, and my father had an alternative lifestyle, so to speak, but they were very much into Black liberation, and Black theology, and developed an appreciation for particularly the Swahili language. And so they learned Swahili. Okay. My mom at one point, whose name is Pat McGee, changed her name to Katika. And then my dad changed his name to Umba. His name is Robert. And so during that time frame, my sister and I were born. So my sister's name Osa Rua Waiusi, which is Osa is the tribe of Nelson Mandela, the Xhosas. They click as a form of language. And Rua Waiusi means flower of blackness. And then my dad named me, which is Fanya Kazikwa Waiusi. And Swahili speakers are probably cracking up as they hear my name because it's really not a name, it's a sentence. It's a sentence with a purpose. And so it is Fanya Kazikwa Waiusi, meaning to work for Black people. So, yes.
Really?
Yes. Fanya Kazi. Yes.
They didn't know that before they gave you the name?
They gave me that name purposely.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So my existence, I feel like I am, when in Roots they raise up the baby and they behold nothing greater than this.
Yes.
My dad basically, I think, did that with me and said, Fanya Kazi.
So where are you from? Chicago?
My parents are Pat and Bob from Joliet, Illinois.
Okay.
Born to Sonny and Flora Lee Burford of Greenwood, Mississippi, right? There is nothing except, being citizens of this country so far.
Okay. That's fine. That's fine. I love to hear it. I love to hear it.
It always cracks me up. I'm like, no, my parents are just Pat and Bob from Joliet, Illinois.
I love to hear it, though. You see they made an impact, though.
They
We
did.
were just talking about
They
impact.
did.
They definitely made an impact.
How the importance of naming your children for purpose, for promise, right? I think is so important. And I think that's sort of like the driving force that has been in my life, was the fact that my name means that
something.
I work for Black people. And if we are to believe the history or the context of the world, like it's believed that some of the first people came out of Africa. And so if that is true, then actually I think I work for all people. So, but I am particularly fond of Black people because I'm Black. So.
Period. Power to the people. Power to the people. So this evening, I want to discuss the plight of heroin and opioids on the west side of Chicago, okay?
Yeah.
So we're going to get a little bit in depth to let our viewers know the importance, what's going on with it, and, dig into it a little bit more, okay?
Yes, absolutely.
So can you let our audience know what is your vision and plans for the West Side Heroin Opioid Task Force?
So...
And before you do that, can you tell them who you are, like, as far as your business, so they don't be like, well, she just talking, where she coming from?
So, the West Side Heroin Opioid Task Force convened in 2016 under State Rep LaShawn Ford. It was actually called the Heroin Task Force because it dealt with the heroin issue on the west side of Chicago. And as a state rep was looking over the task force and what it was doing, it was convening, and it was missing something. And he was like, what is it missing? So he eventually reached out to the organization that coordinates the West Side Heroin Opioid Task Force, and that is Prevention Partnership. And when he reached out, he went to the man who loves the West Side, knows the West Side well, Luther Size. And Luther Size is like, and his other partner, Lee Rush, he said, could you guys take on this project and figure out how we can better address the concerns of heroin usage on the West Side? And so Luther and Lee said yes. And so they did a needs assessment of the community and found out that Narcan...
Y'all, she done brought gadgets
exactly.
and stuff for us. Okay.
Found out that Narcan, which is a medication that reverses an overdose, was not being readily available on the west side of Chicago. And that actually the state of Illinois had a program where they were giving out this Narcan, which retails for $45 in the store for free. And so they were like, well, if our state is giving this out, then what we need to do is go to the corners where people use drugs and people deal drugs and give this to the folks who need it the most, who are most affected. And those are the people who use heroin or other forms of opioids. And so that was like the first thing, that needs assessment, understanding, this is the gap in one of the gaps in services. So let us create the solution for that gap in services, go to where the people most affected can get this medication.
Okay.
And then the second piece is that as they were convening the task force, and the task force comprises of 60 agencies, Fathers Who Cares being one of them, and the West Side stakeholders. They said, okay, what other gaps do we see? And so with that, with conversation, they found out that it was difficult to access medicated assistant recovery. So medicated assistant recovery is a form of recovery where if you use heroin and you need to replace heroin with methadone, Suboxone, Vivitrol, Bupe, people can get on those programs. It lessens the cravings, and then also too you can get other treatment and services around that. So they developed a hotline called MAR Now. That's Medicated Assisted Recovery Now for the state of Illinois. And so people can call that number and go through telehealth because of COVID, which was, a mixed blessing, right? COVID, a lot of people died, but then actually telehealth actually grew because of COVID. So people now can go see a doctor with their phone and say, hey, I am struggling with opioid usage. I need to get into medicated assisted recovery, and doctor, tell me how. And so then a doctor can then get those patients into a treatment. So that was another thing that came out of the conversations with the treatment and providers and harm reductionists that are a part of the West Side Heroin Opioid Task Force. I particularly mentioned harm reduction. So another piece of our work is harm reduction. Harm reduction just means we meet people where they're at in their road to their path to recovery. We don't judge anybody. So when someone comes to us when we're out tabling and says, I am using, we'll say, would you like recovery? They'll say, maybe not now. We'll say, okay. We tell them, know that the drug supply is toxic, poisonous. When you use safely, use with someone else. You use first and then somebody else. You then use.
That's the best way to get them to come back.
Yeah, exactly. We're not here to judge. If you're by yourself, there is another hotline called Never Alone. You pick up that phone, and people will be on the other line while you use and keep you company while you use. They'll tell you to leave that door open just in case you do overdose and they need to call EMS. So it is we just give the person who uses enough information so they can stay alive until they seek their own path to recovery. And we are not here to judge. It could be someone says, I just want to cut back my use. That's a pathway to recovery. Someone says, I need to figure out why I use, right? And then go and get those mental health services, but maybe they can still continue to use. Some people use opioids and marijuana. So somebody says, you know what, I want to give up using opioids, but I don't want to give up using marijuana. Mm-hmm. It is your pathway to recovery, not
because you
ours.
never want to force it.
Exactly.
Especially, I feel like that'll push them further into it, forcing somebody
exactly.
to do it.
Yes. And that's the reason why actually studies have shown that abstinence-only base programs are not as effective as harm reduction programs when it comes to recovery, because it does forces people more into the margins versus coming out and saying, you know what, I'm struggling. And then we work together to figure out the best path. I'm in recovery. I went to Linden Oaks out in Plainfield for my 28-day program. And then also, too, I did another 28-day program in the city of Chicago called Above and Beyond. And what they did was you choose your own path to recovery, right? Okay. My substance of choice was alcohol, which is a lot of people's substance of choice when it comes to sometimes chaotic use. And so no judgment. And all those zones was no judgment. I had a way of choosing my own path to recovery, whether it's meditation, with Above and Beyond. They had great other modalities, such as they use Second City's improv therapy, as well as art therapy. You can do AA or NA. It was your way of how you need to. One thing about it is you're replacing a skill that you did. My skill was drinking whenever I was depressed, whenever I was excited, whenever I had money, whenever I didn't have money. Like, yeah. I had to replace that habit whenever those emotions were rising up. And I had to identify my emotions and what would trigger or activate me to drink, right? Mm-hmm. And so I had to figure out other ways. So now I meditate. Like, that is my go-to standard for my life. Like, okay, what is going on with me? Why am I feeling this way? Let me breathe, meditate,
breathe
and
out.
exactly. And then, like, what? Okay, I know why. This reminded me of something maybe my mom said, or my dad said, or my sister said, or just as you grow up, like the things that get under your skin. And then you're like, wait a minute, why am I letting that get under my skin? I'm grown,
Yeah.
I'm old, you know?
It takes a lot of work.
Exactly.
It definitely takes a lot of work.
And that's one thing that's great about recovery. So those are like the two pieces of our work. And then you asked what my vision was for the task force. Actually, it's always to be deeply engaged in the communities that we serve. We serve Austin, East and West Garfield Park, North Lawndale, and Humboldt Park. And my desire is that whenever Black people are interested and wants to understand substance use and mental health disorders, that we are the agency that we're there. We're knocking on doors. We're on those corners. We are helping our folks get into the services that they need regarding mental health and substance use. So that's sort of my hope for us. And also, too, a topic we're going to get into later, substance use does have sometimes long-term effects, especially the younger you start. And then when you quit, there might be some issues, cognitive issues, that sometimes when we're young, we don't understand that will affect our brain. Like if we start drinking too young, or we start marijuana too young. So, and then when we decide we want abstinence, or we want to decide to manage our use with those things, sometimes the workforce that we're going into is not always forgiving or understanding of substance use, right? Mm-hmm. And so my hope is always to be a place where we can employ people who are struggling with use, or even who are in recovery, but their cognitive ability might be misfiring because when you overdose, it means that you have stopped breathing. That lack of oxygen to the brain kills your brain cells, right? That's just a matter of fact. And so when you do that to your brain, your body, it's sometimes very hard, right? The next thing is to seek employment, and sometimes employment is very hard when you can't, when your brain hasn't healed well from your substance use, your chaotic substance use.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So it's just always to be a place where we're just doing the work and for the community regarding those issues. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in the midst of you talking, I was thinking of a couple of things. Mm-hmm. So I know after we had a conversation, you was like, why you ain't ask me no questions about young people or whatever the case may be?
No, we're going to get into that, yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to know, so do you guys keep calculations of like the young people, like the age ranges of overdose patients that you guys have, or whatever the case may be? Mm-hmm. Because me personally, I know I worked in a high school last year, and we witnessed, like, well, I didn't personally witness, but as far as like word of mouth, heard about a lot of young people overdosing, going through certain things in high school. Yeah. And so do you guys have a lot of patients that are high school students? Like, what is the thing with that? Like?
No, our work, we encounter a lot of adults.
Okay.
So since we're out during the daytime, that's who we encounter. Most kids are in school, so we encounter the age is probably beyond after high school. Last year we did hear of overdoses that were happening with some young people on the West Side, and we were working with PCC Wellness as well as with Aisha's program. I can't recall her program. I want to say Root to Fruit, Aisha's program, Aisha Oliver, as well as with Prevention Partnership to create, and West Care, to talk about drug usage with young people. But as I was telling you before, I'm a youth minister, but I'm not in that lane anymore. So it's very difficult for me to address that. So we don't keep stats on that, but we do keep statistics and data on the people that encounter us on the West Side regarding their use as adults. So probably about 20% of adults on the West Side either struggling with use or know someone that's struggling with use. So we encounter between monthly in our tabling work. When we go to those corners where people use drugs and deal drugs, we encounter about 600 to 800 folks a month on those corners, looking for Narcan, telling us, about their struggles, and if we're out there with our other partners, such as Family Guidance, as well as I'm trying to think of some other partners above and beyond. Thresholds, UIC, COIP. If we're out there with other partners, then those who come to us struggling with use, we can hand them off to those who do treatment and recovery. So we do warm handoffs as another part of our work. So we just don't leave anybody out there by themselves. We tell them that the drug supply is toxic, but what we always try to do is partner with other agencies that do treatment and recovery and have them out on the corners with us.
Okay. So you guys are located on the west side of Chicago.
Yeah.
And so if people are looking for you, they could, is it a certain area, Austin, or you guys are all throughout the west side?
All throughout the west side. But most of us we always have our West Side Heroin Opioid Task Force shirts on. Okay. We're usually on Pulaski. Pulaski's a big corridor.
Really big.
Chicago Avenue is a big corridor for people who use drugs. And North Avenue has, we've seen a spike with Chicago Department of Public Health on that corridor. So we are on those corners every day. And then also another piece of our work that we're doing is we're going door to door with a canvassing campaign, making sure that everybody on blocks where the Chicago Department of Public Health has identified overdose, making sure on those blocks those people have Narcan, so that they can take care of their friends and family who are struggling with use and who might overdose while they're in their care. So there's two things. We're tackling it in two ways, right?
Okay.
With the tabling on the street where people use and deal drugs, as well as then going to those residents that the city of Chicago, the blocks they have identified where there has been usage. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any activities? And if anyone out there is looking to, if they want to contact somebody, is there any way they can contact you? Or
yes.
So if you can give that information out, and if there's any activities that you guys have coming up that people might want to be a part of, if you have anything going on.
We absolutely have our door knocking campaign and tabling. We always ask people to come out and observe that work before they get involved, because it is quite intense, but it is rewarding and uplifting. So you can always contact me. I'm Fanya Burford Berry. My telephone number is 815-545-0470. Again, it's 815-545-0470. Or you can email me at lessharm, that's LESSHARM at westsidetaskforce.org. Everybody's always welcome to be a part of anything that we're doing. We totally believe in transparency of work, and it's gratifying. It's actually gratifying because there's so many people that come back who tell us that Narcan, I want to talk about this real quick, has been used on them, or they've used Narcan on someone else and they saved lives. So about probably a quarter of the folks that we've encountered come back and tell us stories about Narcan.
That's great.
And Narcan is just like, once you put it up the nose like this, you put it up, one dose, you wait 2 to 3 minutes. If the person has not returned to breathing, that's important to return. But if they return to breathing, 8 minutes breath, right? 8 breaths per 1 minute. Then you do not need to really administer the second dose. But yes, if they have, if they're not, return back to breathing those 8 breaths to 1 minute. Then administer the second dose, and then watch the breathing. And then you can administer another dose if you have another dose. Make sure you call 911 and wait till the ambulance arrives. Tell them what you've done. If you know how to do rescue breathing, because that's what is so important about an overdose, is just your breathing gets more and more shallow until it stops, and we need people to breathe. So if you can do rescue breathing with them until the ambulance arrives, if you don't have any more Narcan, because it's important to get oxygen to the brain and to the cells. So that is our work. Mm-hmm.
Okay, y'all, we had a lot of questions,
Yeah.
but the conversation was so good we couldn't get to all of them. I'm so sorry. But if you're just not tuning in, my guest on my show tonight is Miss Fanya Burford Berry.
Thank you.
And this evening we talked about to bring alternatives to violence and substance use on the west side of Chicago. And we here until like the end of December. So if you want to get in contact with us about our youth council, you can contact us at 773-287-5821. Again, that number is 773-287-5821. And thank you for watching, and same time next week, same station. Bye.
Bye.